You may have seen recently that I bought a bike I shouldn't have, off a strange man I shouldn't have,
Abit.
with lots of minor things and a few careless things wrong with it. Further inspection showed it was about £1,000 away from being nice, so join me while I spend some time making this bike good again. Before we start work on the three major things with this bike, which are the radiator, which looks like it's followed a grip truck around, the brakes, which are non-existent, and the rust all over the frame, I want to get rid of these horrible stickers. I hate cheap stickers all over this bike. Get rid of them, and then let's move on to the brakes. The first inclination when the brakes are that toast is I'll go check the pads. So while putting some new pads in, I noticed that the bolts that hold the calipers on have been covered in copper grease, therefore over torqued, and they're stretched. You probably can't see it here, but you could physically see they are stretched. So I thought I'd swap them out with some nice stainless ones while I'm there. So it hasn't helped at all, obviously, putting new pads in. Didn't think it would. But the brakes are either full of air or the master cylinder's toast. After investigating into the brake lever, we slackened it off, rebled the master. The master was full of air. And now, at the very last point, you can see a tiny bit of seepage there. I mean, you let go, that'll suck a load of air in. So, if we look a bit closer, we can see bite marks on there from old tooling, and that one's all corroded. I think the garage, when they fitted these, and I know it was a garage, I won't say who, have put that back in and not changed them out for new ones. They compress from about 1 mil to 0.8, so 3 lots of 0.2 mil. We've got 0.6 mil there, so that may have bottomed out. I'm going to replace all them, and I think that'll be the braking issues done. One of my tips, just before you nip it up, is just check these move freely along your bolt, because otherwise inside it can catch it. You don't want to do that, otherwise it'll ruin your seal. I've just had the calipers off and moved all the pistons around and put new pads in. It's there now. That's solid. That's absolutely solid. I wonder if there's something wrong with the calipers. That feels lovely. Okay, removing the tank on these, thankfully quite simple. Need to look for this white plug here. That's it. You just need to lift the tank a little bit. So one bolt at the back, pull it towards you, and then you can get it or put some rags underneath it. You only need it an inch high. Get at that, and then you've got this fuel line here. You know what it is a tab, bottom, tab at top. You can get your hand in, push them and pop that off, and then them two will stay on the tank. Turns out you need both white clips. There we go. And a little breather. So whenever I buy a new bike, I always like to get the tank off, seat, rear part of the fairing. Just go around, you'll find the odd bits where, say, a bit of a foam's perished here, tank's gone a bit bare, you can see a bit of metal work through it. See, that's a future cause for rust. We've got the rust obviously under the headstock. We've got a bit here where one of these looms is rubbed. I like to be able to see it, no damage to the loom, that's fine, the casing's still in shape, but it has taken the paint off the frame, so we'll touch that up again. And just buy some brush on black, make sure it's clean, prep, sand a little, brush it all in, just help the next owner, or maybe keep it for a few years for you. See all these minor rust areas on the bike or where the paint's rubbed off, not that critical now, but they will be in a few years. I'm going to sand them down till they're nice and shiny, apply some rust converter to them, leave it 24 hours, and then paint over it with some nice black frame paint. Gives a good impression of the bike and should keep it fresh for years. Doing some pre-MOT checks on the bike, I noticed that the rear lights flicker and the indicators are non-existent. Usually someone's wiring handiwork is to blame, so whip that tail unit off and let's have a look how good or bad it is. I usually like to look for stock indicators on a bike because it means the wiring hasn't been messed with, but these don't work. And some minging crimps there, and then a soldered joint with the original connector on. Horrible and rusty. Let's get them sorted out. Look at the quality of that solder. Horrible. So, just using some wire that I bought from Halfords to extend the original plugs back out. Under some nice sleeving, and then finished off with a bit of heat wrap over it to make a really tidy little loom again, as it should be. This bike as standard sounds like a giant sewing machine. Now you can buy aftermarket pipes, obviously loads available, and they make the bike sound amazing. However, I really like the stock exhausts. So you can cut them down quite heavily, or you can just chop about an inch off the end so you won't really notice the length difference. All you need is a grinder or a Dremel to take off the little welds at the end, pop the caps off, and you've got to cut one slit all the way around each pipe. You should be able to slide the centres out. That's the exhaust. I pulled it out, and then all I've done is followed, you see that slit mark there, all the way around. Then it leaves this pipe that goes through and makes that the only exit. So if you cut that through, it looks like this, and you can see there is 1, 2 other pipes, they are, that now allow gases to come through, but it still keeps a load of the wadding on. So it shouldn't be overly loud at that. We're going to push this back in, see how it goes. So you only get one stab at this. The radiator on this bike is one of the last jobs, and it is disgusting, and the coolant is years old, and I'm pretty sure most of it's just water. So we're going to drain that out and see if we can rescue this radiator. This radiator looks completely ruined, but you can, with a bit of patience, try and repair these sections. That'll all have to come off. And straighten them out. So what I was hoping for is a really easy new radiator swap, but the guy or the company who built this thought that was a temperature sensor, so fitted a 1/8 MPT hole thread. This is actually an M18 by 1.5 because it's not a temperature sensor as such, but a fan switch. Yes, so luckily M18 by 1.5 tap. Now I have drilled this out to 15mm, as you can see, really heavily greased that. I'm going to really heavily grease this so that all the swarf sticks onto there, and then try and take it out because I really don't want any swarf in this hole. Right, let's crack on with that. So as you can see, the bike is fully back together. Ended up doing a servicing video, which meant I refitted the tank. Now, I have been out on a small ride on it. I took it to get MOT, which it passed, which is great, but the bars are horrible. I think these are standard bars. Now, I'm not sure if you can see from there. I'll do you a close-up. Where they fit, it's not so much that they're not wide enough, although they feel really narrow. They're so swept back. Your arms, you sat really weird. I can kind of show you there, moving my feet up. You sat so odd, and you don't want to. It feels like the front's away from you, and it's riding away from you. Horrible feeling. So get rid of them and get some. Or what I've tried to get is some BMW GS handlebars. They are much further forwards, much less of a bend, quite straight and really wide. About 2.5 inches, 3 inches wider. And if it looks good, handguards. I love handguards. I don't know what they're going to be like on this style bike, but I think they look cool. We'll see. I think we made a hell of a difference, this bike. So we've got new chain and sprocket, exhausts, clean, debaffled, full service, sorted out the front brakes, they were shocking, new radiator, everything else cleaned up. Just looks really smart, and then a new tail tidy on it. Quite transformed this bike. Best thing probably we did is fit the GS or F700 GS handlebars. They give it a much nicer, wider stance than the horrible ones. The originals are a bit tucked in. They're loads better, and got rid of the horrible bar end mirrors and the plasticky ones. I've put some nice ones on. You're not going to see any more of this bike though. That's the downside. I'm sorry about that, but the truth is I've bought what I consider to be a better bike. It's going to be controversial, this, but I think the brakes are better. I prefer the engine. I think it's probably better suited to a naked bike. It's comfier, and I just like riding it. And again, more controversial, I think it handles better. And I'm going to turn the camera around and show you what that is. This is my old Hornet. I love this bike. I built that. It come up again. I had to get back on it, and I thought it can't be as good as I remember, especially after coming from that. And I rode it, and I still love it. Superb bike, this. You will see more of this one.